Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about helping out. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, would you say that you volunteer your help to your struggling coworkers? Let me ask you a question. Have you noticed that there are no ads on my channel? And have you taken the time to look at how far back my videos go? Have these videos been useful to you? What do you think I could have done with all those hundreds and hundreds of hours by now? That should hopefully give you an indication that yes, I do offer my help to my struggling coworkers, and I even try to go one further. I try to make my struggling coworkers not struggle anymore in any ways I can. In any way I can. Usually, I try to at the very least. The problem that I have these days is it was a little bit easier. It still isn't so hard. It's a little bit more difficult now because but in my current role at the very least it's a little bit more difficult because I've been asked to basically take over the leadership of teams and so forth, and so the problem is that when usually to my more junior coworkers there is a level of intimidation just from the fact that I am the tech lead or the architect or whatever, and it's the same intimidation you could imagine yourself. I mean, if your boss, some people are intimidated by people at a high position and so forth, with right, because there are potential consequences. If you have like a manager or something like that who becomes your friend, and then you say the wrong thing at a party, and all of a sudden they actually do have influence over you and power and so forth. And so that is a challenge. The other challenge is that in my current team I'm also the most senior software developer in the team. Not just in terms of, well, I'm not exclusively in years of experience. We have other guys who work with me who are at the same sort of year in the industry, but I have the seniority in terms of domain knowledge and things like that, which, as I was saying, sort of is also a way to, you become valuable, but you also become a little bit intimidating because other people don't feel so secure in their domain, in the domain, and you do. So when you have these sorts of things, right, the thing that I try to do here is to build this, and this is why I try to emphasize so much that it is so important to be approachable when you have these sorts of things going on. I would go as far as to say that I do not believe in this. I've had a question a little while back about servitude leadership and stuff like that. I think that's absolute bullshit, depending on how you define it. But what I'm a big fan and advocate of is that as if you're going to help someone, in this case it's actually not about leadership, but it is about being approachable to other people so that they feel comfortable talking to you about everything. And I developed multiple techniques, everything from trying to make sure that I'm the one who's smiling the most. I try to, because imagine my scenario, right? And that is the same thing goes for probably a lot of bosses or like people who have responsibilities like that. Anything you say is that might seem like critical and so forth could potentially explode into like it has a potentially bigger impact on people because you are intimidating to other people. Now you can't be crazy about this thing because there are like these people who take this to the extreme, but you should be mindful of it, and I try to be mindful of it, and I try to be the person who is accessible, or like to be an approachable person. And so that basically means to just openly always be the person who says that if there's anything you can always call me, do you need any help, etc, etc. And we do pair programming, we do all these sorts of things that where you try to support the person and then you try to really listen. All these sorts of tricks that or like techniques that you probably learned if you've ever tried to learn like how to be like a good boss or something like that. It's the same deal, right? So I try to do that, but I also try to go to the point where I realize what is going to build confidence in my coworkers. So an example would be, as I was saying, I am the most experienced in terms of domain knowledge. Now, I didn't used to be that person. I used to work with a guy who was even more experienced, but he well, let's just say that things weren't working out. So I had to learn all the things by myself, mostly. But I also knew that the team was going to grow, and I knew that more people were going to come in. So I took the time to make sure that I had a real think about what are all the things that people need to know, that I can sort of create guides or documentation for, so that they can feel as if they can go through this journey and learn sort of the things that they need to learn from me, and do that in a relaxed environment. So I tried to provide, to sort of move the domain knowledge as much as I had that made sense. Of course, I'm not actually a big fan of documentation, but the stuff that I knew was very important that we were repeating, I moved that to documentation that people could read about, so they could start to feel a little bit more empowered by themselves. And then I did you should do one more thing, which is, I think, is very critical, and that is to acknowledge growth in the people that I work with. When I give them praise when they realize something new, or they take more responsibility, they do something that is beneficial for their personal growth, and put them in situation, and I try to put them in situations where they get to be in charge of something, or where they get to do something. It's sort of, imagine this mental picture. It is sort of like a parent helping their child learn to swim. Now, you know that if you just throw them in the water, it's probably going to be very scary. But at the same time, you know that they can't just be on the land and not swim in the ocean, because then you're holding them back from actually taking on a challenge, or something that might be intimidating, like learning to swim. So the sweet spot is usually for you to get in the water with them and stand in the water and see how it's going. If it's going well and they're swimming on their own, then just give them praise them for it. If you see that they're sort of struggling a little bit, you put your hand under them so that you can help them a little bit. And you do that until they can swim without you even needing to give them any praise anymore, right? I try to apply the same principles whenever I work with my coworkers. I don't really have to do all that much when it's like a fellow senior software developer who knows everything. Then it's really just you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, I can probably help you with this, and you dive in and you say, yeah, I'm thinking these things and so forth. It's more of a dialogue usually, where this is the thing that I try to do as much as possible, where I try to walk people through my thought process, where we sort of sit there and kind of, they ask me a question, but today they asked me, why are we committing our cache like that? And I kind of go, well, the reason is very simple. I was sort of lazy, and we hadn't really had a chance to set up the caching for, in this case it was Yarn, the Yarn. We weren't caching when we were running our GitHub workflow, and so we follow the zero policy. What is it? Zero install policy that Facebook uses, or you can go and check it out. Anywho, where you basically version control the cache of Yarn, and they go, oh, okay, why did you do that? And you sort of walk through and say, yeah, I was lazy, and I was thinking that that's going to help us a little bit with terms of, you don't have to pull things from the network, you don't have to concern so much, you can do a slightly faster Docker build, etc, etc. But honestly, it's more of an arbitrary decision, and we could actually change that if we wanted to. So by just giving some context on your thought process, and then shooting some ideas and inviting people in to have an opinion on you and your thoughts as the person who is helping out, you make yourself more accessible, in my opinion at the very least. So what I want you to take away from this is that, yes, of course, I help my coworkers when they have a problem and when they struggle with something, and I try to, as much as I humanly can, create an atmosphere where they respect my time, because I usually am very busy, but they also know that they can always come to me. As long as that is there, everything is gravy. So trying to make yourself as accessible, approachable as possible, I think is a good way, because that breeds the right sort of environment. And then, as I said, I try to create an environment where I transfer as much of my information, like the stuff that I know, into the people that I'm helping, so that, it's basically, it's the learn how to fish and teach someone to fish versus giving someone a fish thing. That's basically what it is about. Try to give them the tools that they need so that they feel empowered and don't use you as a crutch. Support people, but don't become a liability to their growth. Have a great day.